My name is Elise Belanger-Bailey, and I am from ESD, Educational Service District, for those of you who may be out of the state, number 113 in Tumwater, Washington, which is sort of at the bottom of Puget Sound and right next to Olympia, which is the state capital. Hi, Frank. Hi, Brittany. And I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited to be here. I am a former head of school in a private school. I am a head of middle school, a principal, a K-8 principal for many years, head of school teacher, director of student services. I am the mother of 5 adult children, 2 of whom are special needs. So I have a big place in my heart for inclusionary practices. And I am a newlywed. We just got married a year ago, and my husband has 6 grown children. So together we have 11 children, plus in-laws, plus grandchildren. And to make it, if that wasn't enough, we've just moved into a new house. So if you can see some boxes around me and so forth, that's why. Hi, Teresa. Hi, Nick. Thanks, Nick. Hi, Shelly. Hakeem, Amber, Guadalupe, Frank, Brittany. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, if you didn't hear, I'm putting a link to the agenda. Please open that up in a separate tab and we'll get going. First, being a good scholar, I want to acknowledge the work of other wonderful scholars. Besides myself, there are 8 others, so we're the IPP 9, inclusionary practices coordinators here in the state of Washington. And we have all helped to make 12 modules about inclusive practices. And they have everything to, and universal design for learning. And they go from how to introduce it to community and family. It goes UDL and CRT. We have 12 introductory units that really get you started on the road of inclusionary practices. And at the moment, we are making many more, which we're calling UDL theory into action. So it's right where the rubber meets the road. You quit reading the textbook and you actually apply it. I would like to acknowledge Galia Owl, who is in ESD 112, and Ann Renneker, who is in ESD 114. And they made a beautiful presentation out of this, this module 4, and I am working on the basis of their work, so I've added to it. All of the material is covered under the Creative Commons copyright, so please, if you decide to acknowledge this source and you are getting the link for PDF slides, please make sure that you acknowledge who did the work and everything, and that would be just super. OSPI, which is the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction here in Washington State, has asked us to talk about 2 things: taking a stand on equity, educational equity, and land acknowledgement. So here's the first one. Ensuring educational equity, and it goes beyond equity. It requires education leaders to examine the ways current policies and practices result in disparate outcomes for our students of color, students living in poverty, students receiving special education and English language learner services, students who identify as LGBTQ+, and highly mobile student populations. Ensuring educational equity requires education leaders to develop and understand in historical context, engage students, family, and community representatives as partners in decision-making and actively dismantle systemic barriers, replacing them with policies and practices that ensure all students have the access to instruction and support that they need to succeed in our schools. Here in Washington, those of us representing OSPI respectfully acknowledge that the agency is located on the traditional lands of the Squaxin Island Nation, descendants of the maritime people who lived and prospered along the shores of the southernmost inlets of the Salish Sea. We ask each of you to show gratitude to the tribal nations where you are currently located. We acknowledge the commitment of all Pacific Northwest tribes to the resurgence of their traditional ways and their respect and protection of all peoples, not only those who are living, but also those who have gone before and who are yet to be born. We pay our respect to the elders, both past and present, and to a valued resource the tribes have defined as their children. They are the tribe's future. They are the future for all of us as well. We raise our hands to all sovereign tribes who have stewarded these beautiful lands throughout the generations. Our logistics for today will be about 80 minutes. You will have opportunities for bio breaks after slides 17, 31, and 44. You'll also need to make sure you have a copy of your agenda up on a tab because we'll be referring to it. And as I said before, please note all slides are covered by the Creative Commons copyright. You will see an icon in your slides, and this icon, which is a circle, engagement, representation, action, and expression. Those are the three pillars of Universal Design for Learning. And what this icon represents is a strategy that I am using to communicate with you and to make our sessions as accessible as possible. And so I have designed this session utilizing the principles of Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. Here are our thinking targets for today. We'll learn about the diffusion of innovation and system change. We will understand the stages of implementation science and identify system drivers. You'll notice there's the UDL icon. And as I said, a UDL strategy is to be very, very clear about the goals of the lesson. I usually think of this as the object of a game. When one of my grandkids or somebody's teaching me a game, I want to know what the object is, because then I can better classify all the information I'm getting. So for instance, my husband is a rabid golfer, and the object of golf is to get your tiny ball in a tiny hole in as few strokes as possible, and she, with the fewest amount of strokes, wins. Now, when you explain golf to me, I can put everything and understand everything as a pathway to that goal. So let's start with some definitions, maybe for people who don't know. Here is OSPI's definition of inclusionary practices. Notice that all is bolded, and that's mine. Why do you think that would be? And what do you think is meant by all? You can go ahead and put your answers in the chat and respond. When you respond to others in the chat, please put the @ symbol. Inclusion is realized when all students, regardless of their designation to receive special education services, are provided with targeted services, supports, and accommodations, allowing them to learn in the general education classroom and interact with peers and engage in the core curriculum. A definition of Universal Design for Learning. The UDL framework is not a curriculum or script. Let me say that one more time. It's very important. UDL is not a curriculum or script. It is a proactive instructional design process to meet the needs of all students in all classes. That is by Patricia Rabelais, and one of her books is wonderful. I highly recommend it. UDL is a system-wide decision-making tool. UDL aligns with important district initiatives such as MTSS, PBIS, college and career ready standards, and educator evaluations. If you would like to know more about this, really get into what the theory of UDL is and the philosophy and the how-tos, I am offering a session on Wednesday as an introduction to the theory and philosophies of UDL. It's very much the 5,000-foot view, but it'll give you an idea. And then on Wednesday, I'm offering 2 sessions about how to actually implement UDL and design a UDL-based lesson. All right, so if you're interested in those, see me Wednesday or Thursday. definition of innovation. Diffusion of, oh, I'm sorry, wrong slide. Definition work with examples. Before we get started with our content, there are a few technical terms that we want to provide definitions for, as you'll see them used throughout today's presentation. You'll notice again that UDL does not assume knowledge of the vocabulary for the lesson before moving on. These links to these definitions are available on page 2 of your agenda. Systems change. Fundamental changes in policies, processes, relationships, and power structures, as well as deeply held values and norms. An initiative. An act or strategy intended to resolve a difficulty or improve a situation or a fresh approach to something. And full implementation or adoption. The occasional process the organizational process that leads to diffusion as a systematic process. In other words, moving from individual use to systematic use. The diffusion of innovation. This is a theory that seeks to explain how, why, and at what rate new ideas and technologies spread. Everett Rogers, a professor of communication studies, popularized the theory in his book, Diffusion of Innovations. The book was first published in 1962, a very good year, I might say, and is now in its 5th edition. I have a little little question for you, and I've made a poll. So let's see. So if you will go to the poll tabs, the poll tab in where the chat is right above that says poll, and click on that. You will see, based on your experiences, how long does it take to reach full implementation of an initiative? Let me ask a question. Can you see the chat? If somebody could tell me if they could see the chat, the poll, if somebody can see the poll. Can everybody see the poll? Trin, do you know if you can see the poll?
Yes, you can see the poll.
Great. So go ahead and choose one of those answers. Go for it. Take about a minute. Do you think it takes 8 to 10 years, 4 to 7 years, 1 to 3 years, or less than 1 year? Okay, let's see our results. Show results, show results. Do we have? Trin, I'm not seeing the results. Am I doing this wrong? So
let me try it. Let's see.
Show poll, and then it says to click on show results.
So I have clicked on show results. Are people seeing the show results on their polls?
Yes, 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 you are seeing it. Good, excellent. There we go. I don't see the result, which is kind of funny.
Please, if you click on polls, you should see the results right there under polls on the next chat.
On the next chat. Oh, well.
So I can read it to you. There was,
that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so there was nothing for 0% for less than 1 year, 15.8% for 1 to 3 years. Now it's 19%, roughly 62% for 4 to 7 years, and 19% for 8 to 10 years.
Excellent. Those of you who guessed 4 to 7 years have obviously either A, been in a PD with me, or you've read your research. It actually takes 4 to 7 years to reach full implementation science. What's your reaction to that finding? Does it resonate with you? Is that surprising? Go ahead and take an answer in the chat. And what do you think that means? And so what happens when districts only give us a year, 2 years, and then they throw out the initiative? Oh, it's not working, it's not working. No wonder it gets frustrating, and no wonder so many of our teachers look at us with a very jaded eye when we say, oh, we have a new district initiative, and they go, yeah, right, okay, sure. All right. We're going to take a moment and watch a video titled Link to Diffusion of Innovation, the Adoption Curve. Note, I would like you, this is a marketing video, and I'd like you to think about its relevance to implementation science. Here we go.
Have you ever noticed that some people adopt new products or behaviors sooner than others? In 1962, Everett Rogers, a professor in neuropsychology, developed a theory called the diffusion of innovation.
Can everybody hear?
Rogers found that individuals within any society fall into one of 5 different adopter groups based on how early or how quickly they adopt an innovation. Rogers' theory tells us that if you want to promote the widespread adoption of a new behavior like these, you need to market to each adopter group differently, using distinct communication channels and messages. Let's look at each group to find out more. The innovators are a small but important group because they are always the first to learn about and adopt an innovation. They are risk-taking, adventurous, and like being on the cutting edge. The innovators are responsible for introducing innovations to the larger population because they share their experiences with their friends and communities. The early adopters are also a small, forward-thinking group and are often highly respected as opinion leaders. Their endorsement of an innovation plays a key role in what we call crossing the chasm, which is when the adoption of an innovation bridges the gap between the trendsetters and the majority. About 2/3 of people in a population fall into either the early or late majority groups. The early majority take time to make decisions. They will observe others' experiences and will only adopt the product once they are convinced it has real benefits and that it is the new status quo. The late majority are more resistant to change, but they are very responsive to peer pressure. They want innovations to be very well tested and widely used before they will risk trying them. Finally, the last group to adopt a new product or innovation is called the laggards. Laggards are highly resistant to change, and they also can be hard to reach with marketing campaigns because they often have very minimal exposure to media. Laggards wait until an innovation is completely mainstream before they adopt it, and in some cases, they never do. Think of some global innovations in recent years. Social media, for example, spread very fast and many people adopted it within a few years. Other innovations, such as the use of solar power, spread much more slowly and may take decades to reach widespread adoption. So the next time you're promoting a new product or behavior, consider the theory of diffusions of innovations and tailor your communication channels and messages. This will improve your chance of catalyzing widespread adoption.
Here's a question for you. Why do you think you just watched a video about marketing strategies? Why on earth would I choose such a video? Go ahead and put your answer in the chat, please. Why do you think you just watched a video about marketing strategies? So think about it this way. What are you trying to do? Get buy-in or sell inclusionary practices? Who is your consumer? Your staff. And what is your goal? 100% participation would be great, preferably with enthusiasm. That would be super. Usually you have to sell your staff peers on new innovation. Exactly. It's important to get others to buy into the implementation. Yes, ideas take time to think about, absolutely. And a new initiative in education is like offering a new product to consumers. Yes. When we implement new initiatives, we often change when we don't get buy-in or the results we want. We try new products and often too many. I agree. Thank you. That is very prescient, and you are exactly right. So, when promoting an innovation, there are different strategies used to appeal to the different adopter categories. The innovators. These are people who want to be the first to try the innovation. They are venturesome and interested in new ideas. These people are very willing to take risks and are often the first to develop new ideas. Very little, if anything, needs to be done to appeal to this population. The early adopters. These people who are the people who represent opinion leaders. They enjoy leadership roles and embrace change and opportunities. They are already aware of the need for change and so are very comfortable adopting new ideas. Strategies to appeal to this population include how-to manuals, implementation sheets, information sheets. They do not need extra information to convince them to change. Many times these two groups are the people you might want to use as you start to talk about inclusionary practices. You may want them to start some pilot projects in their classroom, and then others can observe and see the results. This is a really, really great way to sell your product. Your early majority people. These people are rarely leaders, but they do adopt new ideas before the average person. That said, they typically need to see evidence of the innovation, that the innovation works before they are willing to adopt it. Strategies to appeal to this population include success stories and evidence of the innovation's effectiveness. Hence, if they see the early adopters doing it in the classroom, using these strategies, getting success, they'll say, sounds good to me, where do I sign up? The late majority people are skeptical of change and will only adopt an innovation after it has been tried by the majority. Strategies to appeal to this population include information on how many other people have tried the innovation and have adopted it successfully. The laggards are bound by tradition and very conservative with their change. They are very skeptical of change and are the hardest group to bring aboard. Strategies to appeal to this population include statistics, fear appeals, don't like that one, but it's true, and pressure from the people in the other adopter groups. And maybe they will never adopt. Which adopter category have you been part of in the past? Consider multiple contexts: education, technology, fashion, etc. Does your adopter category change? How did your experience change depending on your adopter category? So just take a moment and think about that. One of the strategies that we use in UDL is giving a choice on the path and pace of your learning and providing a variety of modes for the resources. So we want to give you an opportunity to explore resources on the diffusion of innovation. For this independent research time, please take a look at the very top of your agenda and find the section labeled Independent Research Number 1. You will see 4 resources you can explore. Choose one that looks most interesting to you. You will have 7 minutes to explore and take a bio break if needed, and then we'll come back together to discuss. In my regular sessions on a different platform, this would be the time when I would have a breakout room. I would put my people in breakout rooms of maybe no more than 3 or 4, give people time to study the resource, come together in a small group to discuss, and then we come together in a large group to share out. And so that is a very useful strategy in your faculty meetings and in your classrooms. Even kindergarteners can do this. So go ahead, and we're going to start our 7 minutes right now, and we will come back together at 1:37. Consider multiple contexts, consider the questions that are on the slide, and I will have you back in 5 minutes. If you would like to comment or question in the chat, now is a really good time. Okay, right now you should be about finishing up with your resource dive, your research. We have 2 minutes, so come on back and go ahead and feel free to respond in the chat if you wish. Good, Susan, thank you. Yes, I agree, absolutely. I think it really is a science, and I think a lot of times when we ignore the science and the art of implementation, because it's both, we fail. Trin, thank you. I appreciate decision making and applying. Yep. I wonder how incorporate culture to yep. Incorporate culture into adoptions. Absolutely. You're exactly correct. I have been a principal of a school that was really excited about adoptions and moving forward and change. And then I was a principal of a school where, oh my God, if you ask them to do something differently or think about their students differently, oh, you're pulling teeth. That was interesting. Allow the opportunities for innovation. That's right. And we have to allow people time to practice. And as Guadalupe said up above, we have to allow time for, chewing on, digesting the ideas, the philosophies, what we're asking people to do. We also have to make sure that they can see themselves doing it. All right. Thank you, everybody who participated. Let's go on. The implementation, art, and science. Now that you've heard about the diffusion of innovation model, which looks at how individuals, very important, how individuals within groups and systems adopt change, we will look now at how systems adapt to change. Schools are large systems with individuals within them, so it is important to look at individuals and the systems, both. What is implementation science? It bridges the gap between theory and effective practice, or the act of carrying an intention into effect. It is the study of how evidence-based programs or initiatives can be embedded to maximize successful outcomes. It recognizes that people need to be ready for change and that creating optimal conditions for an intervention is crucial to its success and maintenance. Implementation science is fundamental to the design of successful interventions. So, why should we know about this process? The field of implementation science tries to close the gap between what we know and what we do, sometimes referred to as the know-do gap, by identifying and addressing the barriers that slow or stop the uptake of proven interventions and evidence-based practice. And there is a difference between when an initiative is presented with passively letting it happen, helping it to happen, or making it happen. The role of the implementation team is to make it happen. We want to be part of programs that happen and make change. Therefore, it is important to know how we can do it and what factors are associated with that happening. So why is it important for you to know this? Within every organization, there are many layers of staff, policies, systems, and barriers. Promoting positive change, therefore, requires a targeted but multifaceted approach. And if a teacher believes that an intervention is beneficial, they will be more likely to implement it with fidelity. Therefore, teachers who have previous experience of an evidence-based intervention which was implemented poorly, thereby yielding disadvantageous outcomes, are unlikely to be motivated to implement the same interventions successfully. Due to these human belief systems, poor implementation could therefore impact on future implementation potential. In such cases, the administrators may have to sensitively challenge the beliefs that have led to evidence-based programs being perceived as ineffective. We need to work together to design and evaluate initiatives by properly adhering to implementation guidelines. Only then is there the best chance of supporting positive changes and having maximum impact on the lives of children and families. A UDL strategy. Knowing the why of what you are learning is important to bring engagement. When you demonstrate the relevance, it can elevate the engagement of your team. I experienced a perfect example of that in high school. Maybe you have had similar. I was a very good student and I was a great algebra student. Then I got into geometry class. Oh my God, it was just awful because all they had us do was write down the steps of a proof. Why should I do that? My 16-year-old self is thinking. I will stipulate that yes, Euclid proved this 3,000 years ago and I'm good to go with it. Why do I have to do this? As a result, since I thought it was completely useless, did I pay much attention? Oh no. Did I do badly in that class? Oh yes. And had they said, Elise, we do this because we are trying to teach you to think logically and demonstrate how to teach logically so that this is how mathematics works and so forth and so on, I would have said, okay, still boring, but I get it. Now, I am also a quilter and a sewer, and I have been since I was 6. Can you imagine if the teachers had taught us geometric principles using, let's say, quilting things? I have to know how many blocks I need, how much material do I need, how big are each block, how many pieces are in each block, so forth and so on. I probably would have gotten an A in geometry. Oh well, it's never too late, so now I actually enjoy geometry. Stages of implementation, and there are 4. Exploration, installation, initial implementation, and full implementation. Why is this important? Knowing that there are stages is important because we can not only talk about what full implementation looks like. While that might be our goal, we need to be aware of the stages that it takes for us to get there so we are not overwhelmed by the prospect of full implementation right off the bat. When I have been presenting these concepts of inclusionary practices and UDL to leadership and or staff teams, there is always a deer in the headlights moment. You know what I'm talking about, right? The tension level goes up and rises like a billionaire rocket. When I tell them it will take 4 to 7 years of baby steps to implement, everything gently floats back to earth and lands with a nice soft, much better. Understanding the stages. Change is a process, not an event. Because implementation occurs in stages, someone must plan and negotiate the journey through these stages to engage and support educators and administrators in order to effectively launch the work. It is important to ensure that those doing the work have the skills and support structures to feel competent and confident in using the innovation as intended. Stage-based work helps to successfully navigate the journey. Starting with an awareness that implementation occurs in stages allows for intentional planning for the change process. When we pay attention to the stages of implementation, we can match our activities to the stages and increase the likelihood of moving successfully through the stage and on to the next stage. We can prepare for the activities and challenges that we will face in the next stage. We reduce wasted time and resources, and we increase the likelihood of sustained and improved use of educational practices. So, let's explore the stages. Exploration stage considers identifying the need for change, learning about the possible innovations that may provide solutions, learning about what it takes to implement the innovation effectively, developing a team to support the work as it progresses through the stages, growing stakeholders and champions, assessing and creating readiness for change, that's a big one, and developing communication processes to support the work, and then finally, deciding to proceed or not. One might start off with casual conversation, data reviews, or surveys to determine staff mindset. The installation stage scrutinizes securing and developing support needed to put a new approach or practice into place as intended, developing feedback loops between the practice and leadership levels in order to streamline communication, and gathering feedback on how new practices are being implemented. The initial implementation stage examines the first use of an innovation by practitioners and others who have just learned how to use the innovation. Initial implementation is all about trying out those new skills and practices and getting better in implementation. In this stage, we are gathering data to check on how implementation is going, and we're developing implementation strategies based on the data. The full implementation stage, we evaluate the skillful use of an innovation that is well integrated into the repertoire of practitioners and routinely and effectively supported by successive programs and local administrations. Note, it does not say 100% of the staff is completely on board. This should reduce some feelings of anxiety when we think about what full implementation should look like. And what does it look like? It's not a linear process. There are setbacks. There are failures. There are times when you're going to think this is not working. We are more likely to have people willingly join in the change journey if we match our activities to the stage of implementation we are in. And if we take into account the stage of engagement of key individuals as well. When we behave as though we are in one stage, for example, full implementation, and we are really in another, for example, initial implementation, we can create tension, feelings of incompetence, fear, and frustration. The signs of so-called resistance may actually be a signal we need to reassess our activities to see if they truly match the current stage of implementation. Think about times you have been part of different initiatives. What did you notice about how they were implemented? Did they start out strong and then fizzle out? How did it feel for you being part of those initiatives? We're going to have another opportunity to research some specific resources. During the independent research time, please, again, as you did before, take a look at your agenda and find independent research number 2. You'll see 5 resources you can explore. Choose one that looks interesting to you. Again, we will have 7 minutes to explore, and then we will come together to discuss. And as you explore, please consider, why is it important for all stakeholders to understand implementation science? The UDL component here is, again, giving choice of the path and pace of your learning and providing a variety of modes for the resources. We will come back together at 1:56. 1:56. Meanwhile, please feel free to put any thoughts, questions, ahas, or anything you're thinking in the chat. Section of our time together, we'll identify systems drivers or the infrastructure needed for implementation. In order to build your understanding of systems drivers, I'd like you to consider systems drivers that help you accomplish tasks throughout your day. For example, what helps you get out of the house? Get ready for work. What helps you meet your needs or share your ideas? Let's start by imagining a family of 7 living in a rural area with 1 bathroom. And in this family, all members of the house need to be ready to leave the house for work and school by 8 a.m. In this situation, the capacity of the bathroom becomes a key system driver to the success of this family, starting their day, being on time, and even ending their day. The system drivers in our homes also have a cultural context. For example, some families sharing 1 bathroom may have little concern for privacy, while others may lock the door and use the bathroom one at a time. This is a pretty generic example of a system driver that may be helpful as we begin to transfer our thinking of systems drivers to our school. Just like within our families and communities, the systems drivers in a school also have cultural contexts to consider. As we continue to discuss the systems drivers or necessary infrastructures for change within our schools, we can think about drivers in 3 categories: implementation drivers, leadership drivers, and competency drivers. In the following slides, we'll define and give examples of each driver. Please think about how this driver impacts your school. One thing connects all 3 of these systems drivers, and that is relationships. It's all about relationships all the time. The strong, positive relationships you have with staff, families, students, and your community will be key to any system driver we discuss today. Leadership drivers focus on providing the right leadership strategies for the types of leadership challenges faced within implementation. These leadership challenges often emerge as part of the change management process needed to make decisions, provide guidance, and support organizational functioning. Leadership challenges can be adaptive or technical. Adaptive challenges are solved through sharing learning and leadership. These challenges often involve problems that are harder to clearly define, and perspectives on the issues are viewed differently from various stakeholders. Technical challenge has clear agreement on their definition and clearer pathways to solutions. Although the work to solve a technical challenge may not be easy, the challenge and the pathway to solve it are clear to all. Leadership teams should have a transparent discussion that identifies and defines the technical and adaptive challenges in a given situation. The clear delineation prevents confusion later. Leadership drivers can include addressing mindset, resource allocation, staffing decisions, involvement of all stakeholders in district and school decision making. For example, a principal and leadership team could be looking at options for allocating resources and staffing patterns because of the need to reduce student injury and discipline referrals during lunch recess. This leadership challenge could be both technical and adaptive, although the problem can be clearly defined as increasing number of student injuries and discipline referrals at lunch recess. We also must consider if the fundamental issues relates to a cultural misunderstanding about how discipline works at recess. A clear technical solution could be to increase the staffing at lunch recess. In this case, the leadership driver at play involves staffing decisions. However, an adaptive challenge that could arise are the attitudes and beliefs around positive discipline and strong relationships with students who need more support with self-regulation and peer relationships. In this case, a leader may need to consider how to address mindset and beliefs around how the adults in the building respond to and support students who struggle to self-regulate or engage positively with their peers. A leader may also need to consider culturally responsive strategies and training. Implementation drivers are organizational, administrative, and systems components that allow us to create, coordinate, and sustain environments for the delivery of effective services. Consider all the environments we must organize for effective service within our schools and districts. Environments such as school, a classroom, the bus, playgrounds, lunchroom, etc. These mechanisms must remain flexible to allow for continued innovation over time. If we think about implementation of increased inclusionary practices in our buildings through the lens of implementation drivers, we are asking leaders to identify mechanisms that sustain our classroom and school environments which effectively serve all students in our general education classrooms. Some examples of implementation drivers. What are they? What are the mechanisms that create and sustain organizational environments so that students and families experience an effective service? Some examples include high-quality curriculum and instructional design frameworks, utilization of effective inclusionary practices such as universal design for learning, a master schedule that supports all learners, a culture of data-informed decision-making, reporting processes, behaviors and attendance policies. As you think of more examples of multiple implementation drivers, please add some examples to our chat. Implementation drivers are components that are needed to create environments for teachers and school staff to work in new ways as well. Competency drivers are mechanisms to develop, improve, and sustain one's ability to implement an intervention as intended in order to benefit children, families, and communities. This driver helps us consider mechanisms to build staff and family, parent, and community capacity to be successful within implementation. These include professional development and professional learning, instructional coaching, and educator evaluation. Additionally, a reliable schedule of inclusive surveys, focus groups, and individual interviews, and a reliable structure for annual data reviews. Competency drivers are the activities to develop, improve, and sustain educator and administrator ability to put programs and innovations into practice so students benefit. What other competency drivers can you think of? Please put them in the chat. Bell schedules. Identify and prepare champions. Exactly. Here's an overview of all three systems drivers. Notice the word fidelity at the top. When we consider the mechanisms at play within each driver, it is necessary to consider how the drivers interconnect. If we create a master schedule that allows co-teachers planning time, but the culture and climate of the school doesn't support opening classrooms to one another or make our practice public, a master schedule alone won't allow for the changes needed. Or conversely, if we are sharing in the learning and leadership as a staff to implement uses of UDL, but the master schedule doesn't allow for time to co-plan, co-teach, or observe in each other's classrooms, then we have siloed practice and greatly interfered with our ability to improve design. Schools and districts must both identify and continue to reflect and refine the system drivers at play in implementation and identify which are technical and which are adaptive challenges in any given context. As you consider the strengths and needs of your school, which one of the three systems drivers might need to be considered as you begin implementation of inclusionary practices? Considering your choice of driver, Where might your school team get started? As our time together comes to a close, here is our last opportunity to explore systems drivers resources during the independent research time. In your agenda, again, you'll find the section labeled Independent Research number 3, and you'll see 4 resources you can explore. Choose one that looks most interesting to you. You'll have 7 minutes to explore, and then we'll come together to discuss. As you explore, consider the strengths and needs of your school, which one of the 3 systems drivers might need to be considered as you begin implementation of inclusionary practices. Considering your choice of driver, where might your school team get started? All right, we will have 7 minutes total. I'm going to look at the chat and answer a few questions and comments right now. Yes, Susan, extremely important. As you can see, there are so many factors that go into this, and when districts or a superintendent just says, do this, implement it now, this is why a lot of these initiatives are doomed to fail. Competency drivers, very important. Planning for multi-tiered levels of professional development, yep, to meet people where they are in support group. And it's what we do with our students, isn't it? That just sounds like good teaching to me, Susan. I agree, absolutely. And as I said before, you know, when you're an administrator, my students are the adults on staff, and that's everybody on staff, every single person. I don't care if you're a custodian, I don't care what you do, every single adult on staff is a teacher and needs to be part of training and cultural things like that. MTS's readiness survey, that is where to begin as we look to respond and consider. Exactly. Also there, Guadalupe, there are needs assessments. Those are excellent. That's a great place to start. Surveys. I can give you lots of resources for that. I can point you in several right directions. And we here in Washington State have programs for that, and I can share them with you. So please feel free to contact me. Create a plan with data. Absolutely. Develop a system that allows others to contribute to the plan and voice their thoughts. Very much so, Tarek. I'm not sure if it's Tariq or Tarek. I'm sorry if I am saying that incorrectly. But the problem is we often aren't transparent enough. And like somebody said earlier, we need to give people time to chew on ideas and digest them and picture them and see them. So excellent point. Thank you. Consider how your knowledge base and or mindset has changed throughout the session. What have you learned and how have you grown as practitioners? What will you do with this information today, tomorrow, or in the future? As you reflect on your learning today, in the chat, please complete the following sentence. I used to think blank, and now I think blank. You don't have to type the whole sentence, just the first and second part if you wish. I used to think blank, and now I think blank. And this is a UDL strategy of goal setting and self-reflection. Reflection is a very, very important part of learning, challenging ourselves, and getting better, and developing tenacity. So go ahead and put that in the chat. I used to think, and now I think. If you are interested in learning more, the AESD is teaming up with AWSP, which is the Association of Washington School Principals, to provide continued learning on universal design for learning and inclusionary practices. We will be offering additional learning opportunities in the future. Additionally, inclusionary practices coordinators are available in each of the 9 ESDs to provide ongoing consultation and support as you continue to learn and create a culture and systems to support our inclusion. You can visit our website to learn more. As of this time, Right now, the IPP project here in Washington State has been funded by our legislature. We've continued funding. Therefore, if you are in Washington State, for instance, my time or your coordinator's time is free, all the materials are free, and the PD is free. You don't need to pay for it. It's a great time to take advantage of that. You can go to the ASED website and find your coordinator, or if you are out of state and you would like more information and like to know how maybe I can help you, because I can help you if you're in another state and so forth and so on, or one of the others, or where to find help on this in your area, please go ahead and give me a call. My information is at the bottom of the the agenda, excuse me. Here are the regional coordinators. All of their information is at the AESD website, and it's at the bottom of the home page. I'm also putting the links right in the chat for you. Thank you so much to all of you for your engagement and participation today. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll be staying on for a few minutes until our session is over. I am putting my contact information in the chat for you. It is at the bottom of the agenda for future use. All of the resources and links are open to you. We have no intention of shutting them off anytime soon. It will maybe be a few years, we'll see. But as I said, these are all for you. Please take these resources, use them, help them to inspire you, answer questions, and get you started on your journey towards inclusionary practices. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time and your participation in the chat.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I learned a lot. I'm going to have to go and read the other pieces afterwards. Thank you, everybody, for participating. We do have other sessions starting soon. And so please, thank you. And I'll stay on for a little bit longer, too, so that if anybody needs any assistance, we'll be happy to help.
And I'll be here till 2:30, so when they close my session. I used to think that UDL mainly supports teaching and learning, and now I think that the chunking of the process can be applied to different situations, settings, and systems. Absolutely. We have a whole unit dedicated to the UDL PLC. So your PLC, Professional Learning Community, can be held, arranged, and work in a universally designed for learning framework. And I can show you how to do that. It's wonderful, and people get a lot out of it. I used to think that UDL only applied to teaching, and now I think that UDL can be applied to the larger system. Exactly. And you know what's really funny, Tariq? I use UDL in everything. And recently we had to put together a bunch of stuff for our house and whatnot. And I was thinking, boy, these people sure assumed a lot of prior knowledge. This isn't very universally designed. This isn't very equitable. So my whole outlook on everything has changed with using UDL. And that's what it is. It's a lens. It's a framework. It's a way of looking and thinking and helping to make decisions. You are welcome, Tariq. Thank you so much for your participation. I very much appreciate it. You're welcome, Rachel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me 90 minutes of your life. I appreciate it. Ricardo, you are most welcome, my friend. Thank you. Glad you were here. That's great, Guadalupe. Thank you. Yes, as you chew on it, and if you have questions next week, next month, next year, please contact me, and we can work them out and talk about it and get you pushed in the right direction if you wish. Yes, Denise, UDL is yes and no. It is not RTI and PBS. However, RTI and PBS are supported within the UDL framework and yield excellent results, especially with RTI. So you're right. In one way, they are rolled into one. They are extremely compatible with each other. And if your school or district has done a lot of PBIS training, if they've done RTI, if they've done MTSS, none of that is thrown out. And I often hear that, oh, we just did all this, now I have to throw it out. No, 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 no. All of those are more strategies to improve instruction and assessment. And on tomorrow from 2 to 3, I will be discussing that very, very point. Brett, you are most welcome. Thank you for your time and your attention. Thank you.